This is BBC Two with Esther.
Has a baby, that brings them closer. Other people strongly disagree. We have parents in the studio today who believe that their baby actually drove them apart. In CJ and Pete Roberts' case, the 3 babies they've had in the last 5 years, they say have made their relationship very difficult. Why, CJ?
Well, the babies have always slept in the middle of the bed. So for the past 5 years, we've had a baby in bed with us.
At least one baby in bed with you?
At least one baby in bed, and now it tends to be 5, so we bought a super king-size bed so that we could all fit in it.
Well, there seems to be a rather simple answer to all this. Buy 3 cots, boom, there's your answer.
That's easy to say, but you have this precious little baby and nobody tells you how you're going to feel, and she comes along, Ajay, who's our eldest daughter, and you just want her with you all the time. And so you put her in bed with you, it's easy. And
does Pete want her with him all the time?
Well, it seems to have sort of developed that way. Our first child was very precious and we loved having her with us. And then with the second and third, it's just sort of developed naturally. The trouble is then that they're always with you and you've got like a little barrier between you in bed. It's almost like a mini contraceptive. And you go to
I was quietly after the programme going to ask you how all the other babies happened, if you were all in bed together all the time.
Well, we get them out eventually.
Okay. But what other effects does it have, CJ, on your relationship, having these children that you love?
Yes, I think that the first child is very precious, so you do everything, and being parents in our 30s, we've made that bit of an extra effort. We've had more time, a little bit more money, just a little bit. And so we want to give them as much as we can. And you don't realise that by doing so, they come first. The children come first, then comes Peter, and then I come somewhere down the line. And at the end of the first year, you think, oh God, that was really hard. And we didn't look after each other, and we didn't go out much. We were too frightened to leave the baby with anybody except for our parents, and so we didn't have any quality time together.
So how do you talk to each other these days? Do you talk to each other the way you used to, Pete?
No. I come home from work tired and Caroline's ratty from having the kids, and we've decided to try and sort of have a night out ourselves every so often. It's just dawned on us after 5 years of children that we never get out together. And we focused on them too much and perhaps not on ourselves enough.
Does this feel familiar to the parents in the audience? Yes, who's saying yes? Right. Yes, Margaret.
Could I just say that I think CJ's opening statement was very telling, that nobody explained to her what it was going to be like after. And I think that's one of the main problems, is that during the antenatal period, there's overemphasis on the birth and the delivery, and everybody knows exactly what's going to happen, and nobody addresses how your life is going to change irrevocably after the event. It's probably the biggest single life-changing event that's going to occur to most couples. And I can't think of any other life-changing event where you're just allowed to get on with it, because it's always happened and it's always will. It's assumed that people will muddle through and get on with it with no support and no help.
Well, all right, well, let's have some practical advice. What about this business about 5 people in bed together? What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's a trap that probably CJ and Peter have fallen into. With the first baby, who is, as you say, is very precious. I mean, I have to say that probably all babies are precious babies to their parents. And you feel that you want to nurture that baby, you want to have that baby with you. And it becomes a habit, and baby gets used to being there. I mean, in some cultures, that is what happens, and that's perfectly okay. And they wait for the children, because eventually they'll get fed up of being 5 in a bed.
So do you think they've got to be firm now for the sake of their marriage, perhaps?
I think that, yes, I think that
How old's the youngest?
The youngest is 7 months.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, 7 months is okay, but another two babies in bed as well. I wouldn't advocate putting babies in rooms and letting them scream, and people will say, oh, they'll scream for the first 2 nights and then that's okay. that's not on. A baby shouldn't have to scream, but you can make it fun. And you can get a room, you can get a bed, help them to choose, you know, let them choose the duvet, let them choose the curtains, let them choose the
other two
wallpaper.
only join us in the morning.
All right, so you haven't got them all night?
Not all night, no.
So you are gradually...
But only the baby's in all night.
What I must admit, I don't think I've ever admitted this before, that I did just the same.
Yeah.
I did just the same, but not for quite as long as you, perhaps. And in fact, it was my husband, and that's why I wondered about Pete, who thought that it was a bit much, you know, that he married me to have one person in bed with him, not necessarily, you know, both of us.
Yes, yeah.
But it is difficult, as you say, CJ, because you've got, you know, you get used to the little baby next to you.
You do, and you love it, and it's such a small space of time. I can't believe my eldest child is going to be 5 in May. But, I mean, it's such a small period of time. You know yourself, Esther, you have grown-up children. Before you know it, they are big.
But you don't want to lose him, the one who's holding your hand there.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, I mean, we know how it affects us. I mean, when we first had Adjo, we used to laugh because we said we used to make love with our feet. And we did, because that was the only bit we could touch without rolling on the baby. And we don't do that as much now, but we know that we love each other, and we're going to redress the balance as time goes on.
Well, you're out together now, aren't you?
We're out together now, and it's
so
lovely.
this is a good step forward, isn't it?
It's just dawned on us that we don't spend enough time together. After 5 years of babies,
Yes.
we suddenly hit us in the face that we need to spend more time together as a couple.
Right, now I want to talk to Sharon here. Sharon, tell me what happened to your marriage. Yes, please.
Yeah, well, my daughter was about 2.5, I think, and very much like CJ and Pete, I didn't make time for my partner. I was so engrossed in the fact that I had this little one that my relationship, well, we ended up, my husband left me. We just didn't, I didn't make time for us. I just became a very different person. I became a mum. I wasn't the person that he married. I wasn't the woman that he married.
How had it been before your baby was born?
Everything was, well, blissful. Madly in love, I would have said, and everything was fine. And then she came along, and I changed. I became a very different person.
You do sound as if you're blaming yourself, doesn't she?
I also suffered postnatally, and I think that
What,
had a
you
lot
had
to
depression?
I did, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
How long did
as
that
well.
last?
Probably about 18 months, I would have said. When she was about 18 months old, I think I started to see light at the end of the tunnel, but by that time he'd had enough of me and gave up on it.
Do you see each other still?
Oh yeah.
And he still sees his baby?
Yeah, I mean, I have no qualms about him as a father. I mean, he's a wonderful father to my daughter, and I couldn't have picked a better man to have had a child with. I wouldn't have wanted to have a child with anybody else. I mean, he is a wonderful father, but, you know, things changed once we'd had a
There's
child.
no way back for you both?
No.
Completely gone?
Yeah.
Because you've changed so much as a person?
I think so, yeah. I became a mum. I was a career woman, and I worked hard, I played hard, and then I became a mum, and I changed. There was no other, you know, major life traumas that we'd been through, or it was just that I changed through
Would
having
you rather
this
not
child.
have had the child? There's lots
Oh
of...
no. I mean, I wouldn't be without my daughter. I think a child is the most awesome thing I've ever done, and no, I certainly wouldn't say that I wouldn't have wanted a child, no.
Right, there's lots of people who want to make points, ask questions. Hold on. Coming to you. Oh, so sorry. Right, who was it here with their hands up? Do stand up for me, yes.
I have to say this lady's blaming herself. It takes two, and I think her husband should have done just as much. She changed because she was a wife and a mother. He should have changed husband and a father. So don't blame yourself.
What do you say to that?
Can I just say, though, that one of the problems is that when a woman has a postnatal depression, very often she doesn't tell anyone that she's experiencing problems. She will put a face on, she will hide it from the professional people. She will hide it from her husband who doesn't know what's going on, but they will pretend because it's almost like a taboo that
Sharon's
I'm not
nodding.
coping.
Is this what you did? You sort of kept it to yourself. Did you do
Certainly. I would never have admitted to anybody that was how I was feeling. I'm sure outwardly everybody thought I was Earth Mother, you know, this wonderful person with this little baby, but inside, no, certainly that wasn't how I was feeling, and I wouldn't have told anybody.
Well, look, we have one or two people here who also have suffered from depression. Let's move on to that a little later in the programme. What fascinates me at this stage about your story is this change in image, if you like. The man who married, you know, the bright, smart, fun-loving career woman, and suddenly she's become an Earth Mother. I'd just like to ask Seth and Jan here. Now, what happened to your marriage what happened to you, Jan, when you had your baby?
Before she was born, we decided that I'd go back out to work and that Seth would look after her. And that was all fine until she was born. And then about 2 days later, I realised I'd made this terrible mistake. I needed to be able to work part-time so I could see her, and that just wasn't possible. So it was very difficult.
So from your point of view, your mistake was that you were not seeing enough of her, is that right?
Mm.
And from Seth's point of view, had you been working up to that point?
Yeah, we were both working full-time until our daughter was born.
So you gave up your job and
that's
decided
right.
to become full-time father?
That's right. I was earning a lot less than Jan was, and we wanted one of us to be at home with our daughter. We felt that was best for her, so I was quite happy to do that.
So you made the transition that we've heard of from Sharon, and you became suddenly Earth Father, if you like.
I don't know about that, but
how did you take to that?
Well, we had 4 months together. Jan's maternity leave, I stopped working as soon as our daughter was born. So we had that 4 months together, which was nice. You know, we could learn the skills and everything. But when Jan went back to work, I did feel kind of dropped in at the deep end to a certain extent because I didn't have that sort of help and support anymore. So
Were
it
you
was hard
physically good at the things like the nappies? And
well, it's just a matter of learning that stuff, isn't it? I mean, nobody's really good at changing nappies. It's just really a matter of practicing and learning. So, I mean, I was able to do that. That was fine.
He was good. He was very, very good, actually.
Thank you.
Cleaning the house, that sort of thing?
Well, I think that's the difficult bit. I mean, all my time seemed to be taken up with looking after this child, you know, and the rest of it I didn't really seem to find time to be able to do. And I think that was the difficult thing. It took me a long time to get into a routine to be able to learn those things. Multitasking, I wasn't very good at to begin with. I mean, I've learned a lot of that now.
It sounds much grander than housework. Multitasking sounds very good. Meanwhile, Jan, you wanted to get home. What happened when you came home and you found how Seth was perhaps not coping as well as you might have done yourself? Did that irritate you?
Well, my perception wasn't that he wasn't coping. I felt he was coping really well. What I felt was resentment that he had the job I wanted. Or at least I wanted to job share with him, and that wasn't possible. So I was resentful.
And I felt really guilty because I couldn't go and earn the same amount of money that Jan could. I mean, I wasn't able to earn that money, and I wanted to be able to say, OK, you stay at home for a little bit and I'll go to work. And but I couldn't do that, so I felt like really bad. Not kind of in that I wanted to be the breadwinner, but I just wanted to give Jan some time at home.
How did you resolve this?
Well, we had arguments and fights, and it took a long time, but eventually, I think because we wanted to stay together, we knew we had to start communicating.
So if you had your time over again, what different things would you two do?
Probably flesh out the details of the role swap in detail before the baby was born. And what I didn't do is think of a backup plan. I never considered the fact that I might change my mind. That was the problem, I think.
We didn't kind of get down on paper exactly what was expected of each other beforehand. We obviously talked about it a lot, but when it came to it, there were certain things that Jan thought that I was going to do, and I thought maybe we'd do together, you know, at the weekend. And so we never really got the ground rules properly down. I think that's the key. If you're going to do this, you've got to make sure you know
And the
what's
baby's not
expected.
real before. The baby's not there. And you can say, this is how it's going to be, baby will fit in, we'll do this, we'll do this. Then when the baby comes, and the emotions that go with having the baby start flooding
all
in,
the plans go out
then
the window.
it's, as
And
you
you
were
know- you don't
saying,
know how
Jan,
you're gonna
then
feel
you
till it
feel,
comes along.
was this such a good idea that I was going to go back to work? Because nobody prepares you for those emotional pangs and the emotional side of parenthood.
CJ?
The other thing is that when you have that baby, to me anyway, motherhood is the most important thing I've ever done in my life. Because you just have this baby and you look at this child and you think, not only did we make that, but I'm responsible for this person. And I'm sure father feels just as overwhelming feelings, but you're breastfeeding, you've grown this baby inside, you're now nurturing this baby, and bang. So anything you've thought of beforehand, because we talked a lot, we must communicate, we must make love, we must do all these things. And then the baby's born and they're far away.
Now, you are sitting next to your partner, Eliezer. How do you do? How do you do? And you have a son.
Yes.
Now, this wasn't entirely a simple babyhood, was it, for your son, because he is autistic?
He is, yes.
And what difference did that make in your life?
A huge difference. You know, when you're pregnant and you imagine you have a picture of how everything's going to be and this is going to happen at this stage and that's going to happen. And with autism, it isn't something that automatically, you know, it's certain behaviours start to creep in and,
like,
you know, you're not sure. Like, this child never slept. He still doesn't sleep, you know, he just doesn't sleep. He's up now. I mean, 1 o'clock is an early bedtime.
What other things were you worried about?
He was very active. He was walking at 8 months, very active. And as he got older, the behaviours became worse. And around about 18 months, he became very, very aggressive.
Is he still aggressive?
He uses aggression to communicate. That's how he communicates, is aggression.
As well as the aggression, what else is there?
Screaming, piercing screams. He can't interact socially.
What does that mean? He doesn't speak to people?
No. He kicks people. I can't take him out because he will kick. And it's very sad because that is his way of interacting and he wants to play, but because he doesn't know how to play, he'll go up and kick. And people tend to look, because with autism as well, you can't tell that the child's autistic. They just look like any other child. People just look and they think, what an awful child, what a terrible mother. Why doesn't she do something to stop that child? And it's terrible, and I'm frightened to go out with him, really.
Now, how has this affected you and Eliezer?
It's caused quite a lot of problems in the relationship, I would say. Eliezer likes to work.
You like to work?
Love it.
You love it. What do you do?
I'm a builder.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'll go out, work from, say, 8 o'clock to when I'm tired.
This is a very unusual builder, isn't it?
Which is 12 o'clock.
Excuse me, no offence to builders, but one thinks of builders in terms of cups of tea and, you know, long breaks. You don't do that. What about playing in the evening?
I've got a social life. I haven't got really a social life.
It's not unusual for him to come home at midnight. And in this time, I've been at home on my own with a little boy.
Now, before your son was born, would you go out together at the end of the day, presumably, would you?
We used to go quite a lot of places, like down the Thames, cafes, restaurants. We used to go out quite frequently, quite a lot. Together? Yeah, together.
And also, when you haven't got children, if he was working one night, I'd think, well, I'm going out, you know, but with Marcus, my son, I can't do that. And because of his behaviours, I can't, it's not easy to just get someone to look after him. It's got to be a very sympathetic and understanding person that will actually look after him.
So what's the future for you both?
We don't know.
What's the future?
The future is, well, I've got to sort of buckle down and start to understand what is really wrong with Marcus, you know, because at first I didn't accept it, or, you know, and
What did you think it was?
I just thought it was just overreacting, you know, Stella overreacting, saying this and saying that, you know, I haven't taken any...
You thought I spoilt him as well, didn't you?
Yeah, very much so, and your parents.
Have you changed your mind?
Yeah.
Are you sure you've changed your mind?
Yeah, I've changed my mind. Well, they're all the doctors he's gone and the letters.
So he has now been diagnosed as autistic,
yeah,
and you accept that?
Well, I have accepted it now, yeah.
What about the long hours of work?
Those have to be cut out, definitely, so I could spend more time with him.
Do you think Eliezer's going to change?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. He loves his work.
Yes.
When he's not at work, he doesn't know what to do. He loves his work.
Do you honestly think you can change?
Yeah, I think I can change, yeah.
Now, you are chairman of the Meet a Mum Association, which supports mothers like yourself.
Yes, yes.
Do you think you yourself have got enough support in the circumstances in which you are now living?
No. No.
I mean, it does sound, Margaret, very tough here because, you know, it doesn't sound realistic to me that Eliezer is going to change his pattern of behaviour.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Were you getting any professional support at all? Was anybody sitting down with you, listening to you know, what is going on, how you're feeling about it, what can you do to cope with it a lot more? Or are you having to muddle through on your own? Because it seems very unfair.
It's just due to because he's only just very recently got an absolute official diagnosis, so the things are moving now, but it all just takes a very long time. You know, and in the meantime, you know, you're with this child, you know, looking after this child, and
it's affecting your relationship.
Yeah. It, you know, and it affects, you know, it's affected my health as well.
I'm sure it has. Does this ring bells at all with you too?
I think we had problems at the beginning of when Megan was born, because we both had to adjust our lives accordingly.
In what way did you two have to adjust?
Well, we couldn't go out and have our nightlife like we used to have. Go out drinking with my mates when I wanted, and go dancing with Sally, you know.
Is this the sort of thing you miss too?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah, well, we just came to a cunning plan, really. We just, we did it in shifts. We did everything in shifts. We not going out drinking and meeting people, of course, but for instance, we both got hobbies. Sally likes horse riding. I like doing running for all my sins. And we just did it in shifts. Sally would go out, do her running. I'd look after Megan. And Sally would go out horse riding for a particularly longer period than my run would be. And then we'd do it like that. And then we'd do things together with Megan. Instead of going to a restaurant, just ourselves get a babysitter, we'd take Megan with us and go early evening.
You see, there is a slight flaw in this argument, because if you carried it on all the time, you'd never meet.
I wouldn't call that a flaw.
No, I just think that I mean, at first it is a big shock. I mean, I was a full-time student and sort of gave up my studies and had Megan and things like that, and I thought, gosh, what's happened? And no one can prepare you for the shock, but it is all about adapting and overcoming and sort of changing your ways of doing things. But I think that children are very adaptive as well, and I think that they adapt to your situation as well as you adapt to children as well.
What about the work situation? Have you given up your work?
Yeah, well, I've actually gone back to studying now because Megan's 2.5 and
right.
There's a college creche. But I think that was difficult because I think Rick found it very difficult to accept that looking after children was work.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I did at the beginning until Sally went horse riding. And then I was left with Megan for about 2 or 3 hours. And then
the difference is that when men look after the children,
yes,
very often, not necessarily the same as Steph, who did it full time, but usually what happens, if women go out for the day and men look after the children, that is all they do. They look after the children, and you come home and they say, I don't know why you make such a fuss, but they've played with them all day. You go into the kitchen and it's a pit, because there's dishes there, there's everything. They look after the children and they do that very well. But when a woman is there, the woman has to do everything else.
Yes, CJ. That's what it is. It's not just multitasking with all the household chores, because I find the same thing. My husband's brilliant with the children, but he can't do the washing up. And so if I go out, yes, it's awful. And you think, why did I ever do it? And I think it's multitasking with the emotions as well. I think that must be the key to it. Men can't multitask. They can't multitask physically, and they can't multitask emotionally.
And I also think that
yeah, wait a minute, Seth. Yes.
If we give it time, you know, it's wrong to say.
Allow the man to speak.
It's wrong to say that men can't multitask. Maybe, but we need to learn these things. If we give them time to do it and give them chance and space to make mistakes, instead of people, because this isn't like not all mums, but some mums will come along and say, "Oh, you're not doing that very well. That's not very good. That's not very good." I'm not saying that about Jan. She's not like that. But some women are like that, and then the man thinks, "Oh, well, I can't do it," and he doesn't do it anymore. If he's given a bit of chance to make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, and learn his own way to do it, then we can do it just as well as... The only thing we can't do is breastfeed. Everything else we can do.
I want you for a moment to meet Angela and Clive Richardson. Now, your situation is very different, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, we've been trying for a family for 10 years now, and sadly we haven't achieved the much wanted baby that we desire.
Are you sure we haven't put you off anyway today?
Well, no. I mean, you know, in a perfect world, we'd still love to have a baby, but I've reached the age of 40 now, and biologically, my eggs aren't particularly good. So we're left with a situation after 4 IVF attempts in the last 4 years that our only option really would be egg donation. And we're we're seriously thinking about it, but we think maybe not. It probably won't be the road we go down.
Adoption, fostering?
Yes and no, but I mean, until just recently, until last year, I mean, we were too old to adopt, both ages combined, because Clive is slightly older than myself, which was rather sad, but they've just changed the rules. So perhaps we need to have a rethink on that. But I think it's something that, a road we won't go down.
Now, you've been trying for a baby for how long?
10 years.
What we've heard today so far is of wonderful relationships that have actually been destroyed by when the fact that a baby arrives and everyone's life changes.
Absolutely. I mean, we have friends, you know, relations, etc., who have had children and their lives have been turned upside down one way or another. And I think that's one thing you need to consider when you're thinking of starting a family, is the disruption it is going to cause one way or another to a relationship, to one's career, etc., etc. I mean, we're living in a totally different world now. I mean, it's so fast moving, you know, women are out working all the time, men are working all the time as well. And I think it is difficult to have a full-time relationship and a full family. We can't do everything. Something has to give.
Of course, there is another element which we have touched on a little bit, and that is postnatal depression. Now, that is something which I think perhaps is still not really spoken about, is it, Margaret? Or not? People aren't warned to pick up the symptoms to understand what they've got.
No, I think that if you speak to a woman who is experiencing or has experienced a postnatal depression, and you ask, during the antenatal period, was enough time spent on postnatal depression, was it explained to you? And 9 times out of 10 they will say no. If you ask someone who hasn't, they'll say, oh yes, it was about right, because it hasn't affected them. But very often I think midwives get a little bit frightened to talk about it too much, because they're afraid that it's a bit of a horror story and it's going to put people off.
Well, you had it very badly. How prepared were you for this, Laura? Just tell me that. How much did you know about it before it hit you?
What, postnatal depression? Nothing. First of all, just by virtue of the fact that I'm a woman doesn't mean I instinctively know what to do with a baby. Doesn't mean I know how to change its nappy. Doesn't mean I know how to feed it or bring its wind up. When you go into an antenatal class, you are told how to give birth to the baby, you are told you might have a cesarean, and you are told how wonderful life can be. One thing that is never mentioned is that you may get postnatal depression. Now, the fact is, somebody has a baby, which is the most life-altering experience that anyone can experience, and we are expected to know what to do. Now, what gives anybody the right to tell anybody that we should know how to parent?
All right, let me ask you a question. Do you think the problem is that in the olden days, whenever they were, mums would have learnt that from their own mothers, from their extended families?
No, I'll tell you what I think. I think that my mother was told that she was a neurotic mother. She had postnatal depression. She was given Valium, OK? Yeah. And the only way she knew how to cope, she had twins, OK? She was told a month before the birth that she was having twins. She coped by going to her sister every day.
Can I just say, you're answering the question next door to the question I asked you. What I really meant was, when we had extended families, when perhaps mum was with us, you know, when we had a baby and so on, didn't we learn all this sort of thing, all these lessons that we've heard about today from our own families?
No.
No? Margaret?
Well, I think it depends on where you live. Certainly in the...
I think it depends on your mother.
And it depends, certainly the valley culture where I come from, in South Wales.
But don't you think it depends on the mother, Margaret, right? But my mother had no maternal instincts whatsoever. She never said to me, Laura, what she said to me was, right, when I was due to have the baby, as I was 3 months pregnant, she said to me, I'll be with you for the first 2 weeks, Laura, but after that you're on your own. Now, she's a wonderful mother, right, and I will never say a bad word against her, but the fact is, when you hear that from your own mother, the immediate thought is, oh my God, well, how am I going to learn to change our nappy? It doesn't matter, I'll go to antenatal classes, they'll teach me. Right?
I think, as I was going to say, that certainly mothers of my mother's generation, certainly in the valleys, I mean, most people started off married life living with their mother in the front room of a terraced house. You could have somebody else living in the other room. So you had...
But we don't live like that
No,
now,
that's what I'm saying. That's all that's changed. And to talk about parenting classes, I think that there is a need, but it has to be looked at. Parenting classes are more than just bathing a doll.
No, I didn't say
and
that.
knowing how to do that. No, what I'm saying is, parenting classes, we need to prepare couples, both men and women, for what happens after you have a baby. What happens emotionally.
We haven't heard much from men. Here's a man who had a baby, yes. What happened to you?
Well, after about 2-3 weeks, my wife started suffering from postnatal depression.
Yeah.
And it basically, going back to what Margaret was saying about up in the valleys with everyone living together and whatever, we ended up moving back in with my mother-in-law and father-in-law then.
Was that helpful?
It was at the time, because it took some of the pressure of trying to care for my wife and my daughter off me.
What about you? Did anyone think about what was happening to you?
No, not really. I was just left basically to fend for myself, bring up a daughter on my own. I was also working a 40-hour week at the same time, doing split shifts. I was coming home at night, doing the feeds through the night, and still trying to spend some time with a woman who had turned her back on myself and my daughter.
Because she was ill?
Because she was ill, and it did affect myself. I can see it more now that I was suffering from some form of depression.
Well, it's not surprising. You must have been exhausted anyway.
But at the time, you can't see that. It's just a case of, you were saying about making mistakes. That's the only way you learn, is by making mistakes and trying to put it right the next time. And
has your marriage survived all this?
No, I'm divorced now. But the thing that frightens me is I've just got into it. Well, I've been in a relationship for a couple of months now, and I've just found out last week I'm going to be a father again. And I've got these... I've got doubts in my mind now. Was it me that caused the postnatal depression on my wife? Is it going to happen again? What do I look for? This time, hopefully I'll be a little bit more aware. I will have people like Margaret will have to turn to talk to for advice, or just to switch off.
Don't blame yourself.
I think very little isn't... What were you going to say, Seth?
I said for him to blame himself. It's not his fault. It's a hormonal, biological thing.
I can sit down and appreciate it now. I know it was nothing to do with me, but at the time, you just look for someone to blame. Because no one's there to help you or advise you, you really just look for the nearest person to blame, and you automatically look at yourself.
I do think life is very tough for young parents these days. I do think we do expect not just mums to be able to be perfect and do everything, but I think we do expect dads as well. And there isn't the network of support that once there was. Yes?
I'd like to say, if the baby was causing your relationship to drift apart, what effect would you think it had on the baby itself?
Right, who would you like to put that to? CJ?
That's interesting, because incorporating this with the extended family, I come from an African culture where the extended family is very important, and I didn't have that extended family. But what I did have as an extended family was the National Childbirth Trust. Now, the National Childbirth Trust helped me before I was pregnant, taught me about having the baby, taught me what to do when I had the baby, and afterwards, the group that I learnt about all these things with, so there were 8 of us as mothers, they were my extended family, because we talked about, oh God, I'd put the nappy on this way and this happened. It happened to me too. I was breastfeeding and that happened. My husband didn't do this, so did mine. So that was my extended family and my support. And we had a woman in our group that did have a bit of postnatal depression, and we were able to help her as well. So I think that extended family situation is very important. And the National Childbirth Trust is very good at helping mothers pre and postnatally. And you know, as groups, you can it's almost counselling. You just get together for a cup of coffee and talk about just about everything.
Yes, madam.
Hello, yeah. These chaps that have had wives, partners that have had the postnatal depression, there seems to be support for the women. Where's the support groups for the men? They need it. They've got a lot of stuff.
Yes, Seth.
I run a group called Home Dad Link. I run a group called Home Dad Link, which is for guys who are at home with their children and single fathers. This is what we're trying to do. There is support for it. It's a new group, it's a young group, but this is exactly what we're trying to do.
We have had a great many ideas put forward. Thank you very much indeed to all our guests for your suggestions. It clearly is an enormous impact on all our lives, this marvellous transformation from ordinary person to parent, and it is quite difficult but highly rewarding. If you would like details about any of the organisations we've talked about today, just write to us, we'll send you a fact sheet. Thank you to all our guests. Thank you at home for joining us. Until next time, from everyone here, goodbye.
The pros and cons of complementary medicine. Esther returns to BBC Two at the same time tomorrow. Next this afternoon, an hour of cookery with Ready Steady Cook and Sophie Grigson's Feast for a Fiver.